Welcome everybody to the Library of Congress National Book Festival. We're so thrilled that you are here and that the two of you are here with us, and we are here to celebrate books. And the Library of Congress is the largest library in the world, so of course we're going to be all about books and everything that has to do with creativity and knowledge. And my name is Sasha. I work at the Library of Congress Literary Initiatives Office, and we are responsible for the author programs at the festival today and every year. And if you like it, you are welcome to praise me. And if you don't like it, tell my colleagues. I was not responsible. We are here today with two really fascinating authors. We have Linda Cao. She is sitting right next to me and is the author of A Crooked Mark, and this is what the cover looks like. And we also have Mark Oshiro with the novel Into the Light. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of their bios because you need to know some context of their brilliance and background before we get started. So Linda grew up in California, and she actually came all the way from California here to DC. She grew up in California, spent most weekends throughout elementary school hauling books home from the library to read them on the rug in the living room. After completing her degree at Stanford University, she taught elementary school for several years before earning a doctorate in education from the University of California, Los Angeles. Along the way, she discovered a love for writing fiction. She's published short stories and poems in Highlights for Children, Ladybug, Fun for Kids, and Boy's Quest. She currently lives in Southern California with her family, enjoys running. You'll see that if you read the book, reading and attending her children's sporting events. And this is the debut novel, Crooked Mark. So welcome, Linda. Mark Oshiro is the author of the young adult books Anger is a Gift, Each of Us a Desert, among other books, such as middle grade books, The Insiders, You Only Live Once, David Bravo, and Star Wars Hunters, Battle for the Arena. Oshiro is the co-author with Rick Riordan of The Sun and the Star, a Nico D'Angelo adventure. They received 2 Hugo Award nominations for Best Fan Writer for their work analyzing books and television series. And Oshiro's new young adult book is the featured book this year. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
And we start this usually by asking our authors to tell us about their books, and we're gonna do the same thing now. So Linda, tell us about A Crooked Mark.
So Crooked Mark, it has Matt, who has been raised by his father to believe that the devil makes his way into the world through accidents. That not everyone who survived an accident was meant to survive, that some people have been caught that jump to the next world. They've been caught by the devil, they've been marked and sent back. And it's his job to find these people because it's hard to figure out who was lucky and who was caught. Find these people and dispatch them. But as he begins his first solo project, it's a teenage girl named Gray, all his beliefs, everything he's been taught, it all just comes crashing down, and he is left wondering who to believe, who he can trust, and what is real in this world.
Thank you. And when she says dispatch, there's a lot that goes into that, yeah. And tell us about Into the Light.
Yes, so first of all, it's so good to be back in DC. Shout out to some people I saw who were here 5 years ago for my launch at Busboys and Poets with Jason Reynolds. It was great, and it's good to see you again. I love this place. So Into the Light is my newest YA novel. It is a thriller with a speculative fiction twist about 2 boys whose lives are intertwined because of a religious camp in the forests of Southern California. And you follow both of these boys. One of the boys, Eli, is a member of his camp, but cannot remember what happened to him before he arrived, and he's constantly told he is a miracle. And the other boy, Manny, was cast out of this camp a year prior, and is currently homeless and is sort of wandering California by way of hitchhiking and whatnot. And he sees an item on the news that he believes to be the reveal that a body that was found outside the camp is his sister, who was responsible for him getting kicked out. And so he decides to make his way back to attempt to find this place. And I'm not going to tell you how those 2 stories collide, because it'll do things to you.
Yes.
Very fun. It's a light romp with only jokes. Actually, one of my favorite jokes I've ever told is in this book. But it is a book that is deeply autobiographical, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, and in ways that I've never written about before, but I'm very proud of it.
Thank you so much. And it's quite a read. These 2 novels are really will really get you there. If you are looking for a new place to go to with your reading, these are two really excellent novels. And they're both categorized as speculative fiction, so can you tell us how you feel about that categorization? Is it right? Do you prefer something else? Talk to us about speculative fiction of your work.
And can you hear me okay? Okay, and thank you so much for having me. Yes, I wanted to say thank you. So speculative fiction, to me, I've always loved looking at the world and then just tilting a little bit sideways. And I think so many of us do when we think about, imaginary friends, that secret place we have in our yard where it's magical to us. It's the world, but we've added something. And I like this idea that not everything is apparent, that you have to look for it. You have to be willing to see it. And I like the idea of letting your imagination really roam. Thinking, not stopping yourself when you feel it kind of wandering out there, just following it and letting it go. And I think that brings some really interesting, amazing stories.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea that it's just our world, but just slightly tilted. I've grown up reading speculative fiction, whether it's horror. I grew up on the X-Files, on Twilight Zone. Anything that is our world but weird, I love. And it's also interesting talking about Into the Light because we were talking about this before too, but I'm in this very interesting position in which my publisher has basically been promoting the book, telling you that there's a twist in it. And so you don't find out it's speculative fiction until 320 pages in. And I'm very deliberate in talking about that too, because it is a very polarizing thing. I've had people say very angry things about it because they either don't like it or it upsets them. And I made my peace with it. This is the story I wanted to tell and the way I wanted to, which is our world, but slightly off. And I love finding the interesting things in how our world can look if things are just slightly off. I feel like I'm always gonna be on that edge of speculative fiction. It's just really fun to write that way.
Yeah, and not your entire novel has to be speculative fiction. It can be completely real world until you tilt it for them. And I really like the way that you describe it too, Linda, especially the way that you let your mind keep wondering, sort of like asking, what if? Mm-hmm. And then allowing yourself to answer that, even if it doesn't make sense. That's the beauty of speculative fiction, right? So you talked about how the publisher tells you there is a twist. And when I was reading it, I knew it, but I kind of forgot. And then I was like, oh, a twist! So it's really, really well put by the publisher. They were clever, and Mark was very clever too. And Linda took a different approach when it came to how she makes you feel. And perhaps there's also a twist of some sort. So tell us about that in your book.
I think for me, and I love your twist, and I like the idea that something's coming, but you don't know what it is. And I think for me, when I was writing A Crooked Mark, I wanted to write something where there might be a twist, but you would see it, and then you would look back and kind of be like, oh, there's the clue. There's the clue. And you do this so well in yours also, where it's just like, I got to the twist, and I went, oh, and then I started flipping back because you wanted to see what did I miss along the way? Now that I know that this has happened, now what can I go back and find? And that's what I love so much about your book, about the books that really just kind of build it in, where you can read it again, and it's like reading it a different book because you're like, I see it now. I see it. You can build it in like that. So.
And I'm also interested to hear how you figured out how to do that, because writing that is very difficult, in part because I think as people who have read a lot of genre books, we are so aware of how the twist works that we're thinking of ways to both, it has to be hidden, but it also has to make sense. That's important, because something can be hidden but then not make sense and it's not satisfying. And so, knowing that I can't even say that. I was gonna say knowing going into this book it had a twist, it actually didn't. For the longest time, it wasn't until later revisions that I sort of unlocked what the book was about and realized I had to do this thing, as weird as it was. And so I still wanted to make sure that as you were reading Into the Light, the twist is an important part, but it's not the whole book. The experience of Manny on the road, or the experience of Eli and his unwavering faith that then starts to waver. Those stories to me had to have as much weight and have as much meaning as the inevitable moment when the two stories clash together and you realize why things are happening the way they are. But it's not easy. It's not easy writing twists or thrillers or any of that.
It's not.
Don't write. No, I'm just kidding. It's a challenge. It's a very daunting thing to have to do.
Especially for genre readers, right?
Yeah.
You get to play. Go ahead.
And I was going to say, that's one of the first things whenever I finish my draft and it's to a place where I'm pretty happy with it, I send out to my beta readers.
Okay.
And so I have this wonderful group that they will read my things and they'll come back and be brutally honest, which is wonderful. And they'll say, this part was good, but this is where you need to work on. And my first question to them is always, did it make sense? Did it work? And did you know everything? Like, did you hit page 10 and you're like, oh, I know the rest of the story, and did you? And so that's one of the first questions is, did I layer it correctly? Did I build in those breadcrumbs?
And I got that from my editor. I think it was the second version of the book where I was attempting something else. It was still 2 points of view, but she actually was very honest and said, this isn't connecting. This isn't quite making sense. I almost blurted out what it was. Actually, I'm not going to say it. But anyway, then she just suggested something offhand, and I said, well, it would be so much easier if X happened. And then I sat there and was like, oh, and that's what it took. I had to basically write it wrong, and then get that feedback of it's not connecting, something is missing for me to realize what that piece was.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was your process working with the editor? Do you feel like they saw what you saw when you were writing?
She was fabulous. It's Ruta Remus from Razorbill, and yeah.
It was great. It was just amazing.
And she saw what I was trying to do with the story, and she had such good feedback. And I think we talked about this, how it's so wonderful when they offer ideas.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this part wasn't working for me. Can you fix this? And she saw what I was trying to do, and she said, that this one part here, you have Matt doing X, that's not working. And she didn't tell me, have him do Y. She never says that. It's the X isn't working, figure out a Y. And we can throw ideas back and forth, but it's always very much like, and this is your world, so you will have a better answer. And so I think that's one thing that I'm learning as I go, is that I can hear from different people what isn't working, but if I want to find out what does work, I'm probably going to need to pull it out of myself.
So the first draft of Into the Light, this I promise is true, was a comedy. And if any of you read Into the Light, you're going to be like, that's impossible, there's no way. But it was a comedy because for me, I wanted to use humor to dig into the concepts of religious trauma and conversion therapy, these very serious, heavy issues, and I thought humor was the way to do it. And so I wrote this book that was essentially like a discarded episode of Supernatural, which I also want to talk to you about too, because I got very much Supernatural vibes from your book too. But like, it was this thing of like where that show, when it was at its height, it was so good because it was both serious and really funny. And I turned this in, and if you are a writer in this room, this will probably set you into a catatonic shock. But she was like, these jokes are so funny. I love this. This is so you. And she's like, I've done 2 of your books so far. So I don't want to say what your brand is, but I do feel like what you do is you tell teenagers the truth. Mm-hmm. And every time I read this book and I thought you were about to tell the truth, you veered off into a joke. So do you want to turn in a funny book or a good one?
Brutal.
I am still in therapy because of that. Like, but she didn't mean it in a mean way, and I didn't take it in a mean way. It was this is funny, but you're missing. It's not quite there. And so it's that same thing too of like, she didn't tell me to go make that. Like all of it then came from thinking about, well, what do I want to tell the truth about? When very relevant to the name of this panel is like, I wanted to talk about being a teenager and having a secret that everyone forces you to keep as a secret. Like, and how painful that is and how it tears your body apart. And it is a horrible thing to live through. And I realized like, okay, there can still be funny. And I think Manny is actually really funny, but like,
he's good.
He's very funny, but there's a way to tell the story that you can get closer to the truth with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the secret parts are so strong in both of your books. Yeah. And when Linda and I were talking before the program, it's not only about the people in your life that force you to keep a secret or are keeping a secret from you. It's also the way the world keeps secrets from us, particularly teenagers, and doesn't trust them with what's really real. and kind of creates this veneer surface. So can you talk about how you approach that?
Yeah, I think for teenagers and for anyone, anytime you trust someone and you expect the truth from them and you think you're getting the truth, I think that moment where you realize, wait, you haven't been completely honest, that's a hard moment. And for Matt, when he starts to question, he has been believing his dad this whole time, and he's really just been, following him along. He's been learning. He wants to make his dad proud. And so now all of a sudden, he's got that feeling inside that's like, wait, I don't know if I trust you. And so that's a hard secret to carry, because who do you turn to when the person you always turn to with your secrets, what if it's them? What if that's the person you're doubting? And so that was interesting to build in.
And it was hard too, because reading the book, I was like, there's so few, particularly in this organization that he's in, that allows him to not be secretive. Like, secrecy is built in to that whole organization. So even if maybe he couldn't tell the truth to his dad, he has almost no one else he can tell the truth to, well, until he meets these friends. And I thought that was beautiful too, is like, here are people he can actually be real with. But it's so hard being a kid and realizing that there are adults in your life you can't tell the truth to. And I resonated a lot reading your book of like, that is such a big struggle to go through.
Yeah, and I think for both books, it's finding then, well, if I can't trust this person, who can I trust? Mm-hmm. And I think, you do it so well. You can find people that even maybe they weren't present in the beginning, but if you find them along the way, and maybe that trust is initially hard, especially if you feel like you've been let down in the past. But if you can find the people that you can share a secret with, that makes it so much easier to carry.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you are able to share the secret or find out a secret, it is a lift of the burden. Mm-hmm. But you give that burden to the readers. Like, we are reading it with secrets, with twists coming, with like blindsided. So how do you figure out how to mistreat your readers?
Oh.
At the same time as you keep them reading on. Don't anger them so much that they just...
No, I'll do that. I don't care. There are some people here who've been following me. Hi, dear. Who've been following me. I used to run websites and a YouTube channel where I would read things unspoiled. So people would recommend me things specifically to destroy me. So my entire writing career is just revenge. Like, I just want to get back at all of you. But I do think of how fun that was, and how fun it is to read a book, watch a TV show, watch a movie, and be blown away by a twist, by the ending, by a character moment, and to have these emotional responses to fiction. So I'm always thinking of that as I'm writing. I think with Into the Light, knowing it was personal, I knew people would be able to recognize things in it as things that I have gone through. But I also was thinking of the kids, particularly now, who feel left out and forgotten. And it sucks that we are in a world where the stuff that I was going through in the 90s as an in-the-closet teenager are now happening all over again. So I wrote this book less for kids who are out. They may be able to recognize like elements of this, but I was thinking about the kids who are struggling, who don't have people they can tell, who get sucked into these organizations and these groups like I was when I was a teenager. And so, I hear this in writing advice sometimes, and I don't know if you've heard it too, of like, don't write books for specific people. Don't try to don't try to write a bestseller. Don't try to do this. And I understand that, but I actually found it very relieving and freeing to think of these specific kids and write the book only for them. Mm. And then if all the rest of you who maybe can't relate to it enjoy the book, great, but you're not the person I'm writing the book for. So this one, I was actually thinking about giving comfort to a very small group of kids. And I like that. I think it gave me a focus to how I wrote Manny and Eli's story, and Elena too, and thinking of the other kids who are affected by what happens in Into the Light. And so that was like sort of a guiding force for me as I was writing the book.
And it says a lot that so many people can relate, even though...
Yeah.
And can you tell us what that specific group of kids is that you wrote about?
Oh my God, yeah, particularly, if you've never heard the term, I am what is called a transracial adoptee. And if you're listening right now, Rachel Dolezal, I hate you for taking that word away from us. It is not someone who is transracial as she uses it, but it was a word that has been used for decades to refer to children who are adopted out of their ethnic or racial culture and into another one, usually by the dominant force. So the reason I have a very traditional Japanese last name, in case you saw it and were confused, I'm adopted. My dad is Japanese and Hawaiian, and my mom is white. And I grew up in a very confusing environment, particularly because my adoptive mom in particular did not know how to raise two Latino kids at all, and did not allow us to explore our culture, did not allow us to speak Spanish, like actively raised us in white supremacy and tried to whitewash us as much as possible. And so there's an intersection between that and queerness in the book that is hyper specific. And I knew that writing the book, but that is what I wanted to speak to is these kids. I think there are a few greater tragedies than someone who is adoption, a process that is hard and is very difficult, and then your adoptive parent rejects you. Like, it is so deeply painful and specific. And so this is a book about a kid, Manny, who is you learn within 2 pages, like he has been rejected by his adopted parents. And so, yes, it is a difficult thing that I wanted to write about, but was so freeing for me. God, it was like, I get people who ask me like, how painful was this? And I was like, at some point it actually wasn't painful at all. It was just freedom. It felt wonderful.
Catharsis.
Yeah, catharsis, that's a good word.
Yeah, thank you. I studied for the GREs.
Oh, I love that.
But it really feels like that you take us both on an emotional journey, and then you like beat us up, and then you give us a really beautiful release, and thank you for that. And that's
Wait, I want to talk about your release, because your release is wild. And I know we can't spoil it too, but like,
No.
I mean, the thing with Matt that's what's so amazing about his journey is that I felt like, especially in the early parts of the book, he wasn't in touch with his feelings either. And particularly writing a main character who is a boy who becomes in touch with his feelings and emotions was so amazing to me. And I would love to hear how you approach that.
Okay, moderator Mark.
So I read this book like a week ago, and it was like,
I know.
Well, this is my only chance to talk about it, so it'll be in front of all of you. Like,
I have 4 questions in a row for Linda,
Yeah.
so it's going to be you center stage for a bit.
Thank you. It's, when I first wrote the story, and I wrote Matt and his whole story, and I got to the end, I had my complete draft, and I could tell something was missing. And I was lucky enough, I was chosen for Pitch Wars. It's a mentorship program. It just recently ended, but I had Heather Azell and Rachel Griffin as my mentors. And they said, okay, here's an idea. What if you take your main character, you made it a girl? I said, oh, that's different. That's a lot of revision. Let's try it. And so I did, and I found out as I wrote it that what was missing was that emotional arc. I couldn't quite get it there until I took it through this whole process, and I let myself become more vulnerable on the page. It is my debut, so it's hard to share so much and to really just kind of feel that moment and put it on the page. And then I feel like, well, I'm sharing, my sadness, my grief, and I was able to do that on this revision. And even though we did ultimately change it back to Matt, I kept all those feelings, and that was what really helped me.
I love that. That's amazing.
I don't recommend it as a whole strategy, because if you can figure it out earlier, it's a lot more efficient if you just write it one way.
You went on your own journey as you
Yeah.
were figuring it out. Can you tell us who you wrote the book for, or was it completely you needed to get the story out?
It was just a story that it came to me one day. I saw this person walking, and they just had an expression on their face where you could tell that something terrible had gone wrong in their day. And so I followed all the what ifs. Well, what if they had an argument with a friend? What if there was bad news from a doctor? And just kept going to what if the devil just reached out and kind of messed with this person's morning. And then I thought, well, how did the devil get here? And well, of course he came. He slipped in through accidents. And this was just a story that I just played with it. And it just kind of, sat there. And I was writing short stories at the time, and my short stories were very sweet. And this idea was a little scary, because I knew that if I went this way, this was not a sweet, short story to tell. But it sat there, it festered a little bit, and finally I sat down and I started writing. And so that's what came out.
Man, Linda is such an interesting person, because here she sits and she has these beautiful, wonderful answers. But the book, you guys, is
dark.
so dark. it's so twisted because when I think what ifs, I don't get to the devil marked you because you almost died.
Yeah.
You know? So can you give us any kind of insight into what your brain is like?
I love that.
I don't know how else to ask.
I like how that's a professional way of being like, why are you like this? Like,
I am a federal agent
Yeah.
asking you.
It's funny because I never saw myself in this category. My first stories, I had my short stories. There was a hedgehog, and he was a mail carrier, but his uniform got dirty, and what was he to do? And it all worked out. It was okay. So this is.
wait, but I also want that.
So that's where I started, and this idea that this was also for me, that this topic, this darkness, that I could have a character who's going to hunt the devil and possibly burn people. At first, it felt like, oh, I don't do that. I don't. That's not what I do. But yes, it is, and it was a lot of fun to write. And when I gave the copy to my parents, I was a little worried. I said,
Oh.
It's okay. My upbringing was fine. Thank you. And they came back and they said, that was great. We loved it, And so that was fabulous. And there was a part of me that's like, okay, this is okay. I can
wow.
do this. And so it's fun to explore that other side that you think maybe it's not me, but then you find out it fits pretty well.
But they weren't scared.
They were not scared.
There's something out there. Did your kids read the book?
My daughter has. My son has not yet. He's thinking about it. He's eyeing that cover and going, I'm not sure about that one. But my daughter has, and I said, it's already published. Don't tell me if you don't like it now.
It's too late.
So she assured me it was fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Who read your book? Who was outside of your editor?
One friend, who I'm going to shout out now, Sarah Gailey, who is a fantastic, wonderful author and is literally my other half. In fact, right now, I'm pretty sure I have our shared brain cell, so I'm real worried for what's happening in Sarah Gailey's life right now. But Sarah Gailey was actually really instrumental during the brainstorming as it changed from a comedy to serious, and we did a lot of talk about how to write about trauma and how to be personal without hurting yourself or hurting a reader. But to be honest, and I think one of my favorite things to get back from them was just like when they read this version was, this is the most unhinged thing you've ever written, and it just made me feral reading it because it was so unabashedly you, and you wrote the book that you wanted, and you didn't care whether it was going to get banned, you didn't care whether people weren't going to like it, you just swung as hard and wide as you could, and you could tell that on every page. And I just remember just tearing up and being like, yes, that's what I want to do as an author, as an artist, is to just put my vision on the page as much as I can. I wish I'd figured that out the first draft, not the fourth, but can't pick your,
That's how you get to the really good
That's right,
ideas,
exactly.
Right. And you had this book in the making in your mind for 6 years.
6 years.
How about you, Linda? How long has this been marinating in you? Maybe not this exact story, but what you wanted to say.
Well, I checked my computer before I came. The first draft was saved in 2016. The idea
wow.
was probably
7
a few
years.
years before that, so it's been a while.
But I mean, stories take what time they need to. I knew when I got the idea, I wasn't published yet. I'd written and was drafting or revising Anger is a Gift and trying to find an agent. And so I knew that this would be so ambitious and personal that I was like, let me get a few more stories under my belt before I try something like this. And so I didn't start writing it until 2021. So it took 5 years for me to get to a place where I'm like, I think I had the craft ability, and I've been in therapy now for 2 years. That helped a lot.
Protect yourself.
To have something that was also something I could fall back on in terms of my mental health. But I have story ideas on in my notes app. I have a whole folder that's just story ideas, and there's stuff in there that's like 10, 11 years old that I'm like, one day I'll figure out what that is. But I'm very much like an idea takes enough the time it needs to become a story.
6, 7 years is what the two authors on here took. So
Have fun.
Keep
It's
that
a long
in
journey.
mind. But was there something, and especially as a debut author, did you have a particular time that you're like, okay, I wrote a lot of stories about hedgehogs, but now it's time to write about burning people who might be marked by the devil. How did you get to that point where you were almost trusting yourself to have a published book out there?
I had written other things that should never see the light of day, my practice novels, right?
Bring them
And
into
so-
the light. Okay. Sorry.
I started trying my hand at the longer books a little bit earlier. And I think for this one, it's kind of like what you were saying about how you kind of, you have the idea. And so I had the idea, how does the devil get in? And I started thinking about Matt.
Yeah.
But it just had to sit and just kind of grow until, for me, I will plot a story out ahead of time. Just at least the basic beats. So I will know my beginning, my middle point, my all is lost moment, my end moment. And so I'll have that. And once I have enough of it plotted out where I can kind of sit down and picture a scene, because I have to picture the scene before I write it, that was when I was like, okay, I'm ready to try this out. But I had to have a good feel of where the story was going. And then, of course, I wrote it all, and then it all changed again, as the stories do. But I needed to kind of see it in my head as a movie, kind of where I was going with it, and then I was able to put it down on paper. Yeah.
Oh, that's a really nice process. Not so intimidating as I've heard from other writers before. Like, I cover my wall in Post-it notes, and
I'm feeling very called out right now. No,
Please
I
tell
don't-
us
I
your
don't- I don't know that I
process.
go that far, but I also have to figure it out beforehand. I don't start writing a manuscript until I know the ending in particular. But I'm a very detailed outliner, so I will take it beyond story beats, and I will figure out like what every scene, what's happening, who's in it. I need to figure out all the characters, their names, where they're from, their background. So I do a lot of background work, pre-writing, brainstorming before I start writing, and then I always write the last scene first. Because for me, I want to earn the last scene. And so when I get stuck as I'm drafting, I think, well, how do I get there? Or how do I not get there because something needs to block it? But otherwise, I do feel emotionally that I need to know like the building blocks of the story before I start writing. I still have the discovery as I'm actually doing the manuscript. But I will say that I'm working on my next YA novel right now, and it requires so much planning that I am turning into the Post-it notes on the wall person. And I've never done that. And it's weird, but I'm very excited. It's really cool. I have like Post-it notes, index cards, highlighters, markers, little star stickers for a thing I
do you
can't
have
tell
those little thin tabs that people put into books when they're organized?
Yes, but I did that for Percy Jackson when I was auditioning for the Percy Jackson book.
Yeah.
I used that to do thematic like notes. So I've been doing that for years. That's the nerd in me. But no, this one I knew it involves multiple universes, and the universes all have a specific star. So the stars you would get when you're like, you get a star. I'm like, you're in the hell world, you're in the happy world, and they're like different colors because I need to figure out where everyone is. It is a mess. My apartment right now looks like the meme of Charlie Day in It's Always that. So it looks like I'm discovering a murder, but it's just a book.
Okay.
That's what my apartment looks like, my little office space.
I'm gonna tell my family that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They're
Absolutely.
watching me right now. They're like, is that really why the room is a mess?
Yes.
But, so do you feel like you had some chaos you had to organize, or did it come to you pretty pretty neatly?
The parts that came neatly were fine. It was the you have your Post-it note, and then you're supposed to have a whole bunch more Post-it notes, and then the next one, I would have Post-it note, Post-it note, Post-it note, Post-it note. And so this was this part I had to fill in. And I feel like the reason I give myself those gaps now, I've learned, is that because when I would be very meticulous for the first one. I put down all my Post-it notes. I made sure I had everything right. And then right around Post-it note around 10, it started going like this, and my Post-it notes went like that. And so I had to go this way, but then all my other Post-it notes had to change, except for those beats. I could hold on to those, but there were a lot of changes along the way. So.
They had their own life a little bit. That's amazing. I'm always so fascinated to hear about how the authors have their craft, how really they approach the writing process. And one in particular element I wanted to ask you about was pacing, because you are both in this, there are a lot of similarities in your books, but a huge, huge difference that is immediately obvious is Linda's book starts with, And Mark starts with,
I love the sound effect.
there's all this stuff happening, and,
Yeah.
it's sad, and there's the story, and there's the background, and you slowly figure it out together, and then he punches you way later, right in the face. So like, how did you decide at which points to hurt your readers? In a fun way.
There's so much loving violence on this stage right now. I love it. It's great.
So much.
So the structure of Into the Light didn't come until that last draft when I unlocked the thing that I knew I was going to do. And because I'm me and I can't, if you've ever read a Mark Oshiro book, the first one, Anger is a Gift, is the only one that's like normal. And I keep getting weirder and weirder. Like, you only the one David Bravo has like 4 time loops in it. You know, Each of Us a Desert is all a prayer with weird short story interludes. So Into the Light is my first attempt at a fully nonlinear story. And I knew it had to be told that way, but I couldn't figure out how. And I remember realizing what the pattern was. And so I knew that it would also make reading the book very hard. And it was a thing that, just like the twist, I'm like, if I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to do it. So, but I also knew, okay, if you're going to do this format, commit to it. And I'll tell you this now, because I don't often get to talk about it, but the essential framework of the book is you are experiencing reality as someone with complex PTSD experiences. That's what I have, complex PTSD from my childhood. And what happens is, as time moves forward, a person with PTSD cannot control when your memory loops back around. And there are incidences or events that basically make your brain take you back to a specific time frame. So that's the structure of the entire book, is Manny having these moments where he cannot control, and it sometimes happens very abruptly in the middle of something.
Right.
It just goes to something else. And so I knew, I was like, well, if you're going to do it, commit to it. And so that was daunting and terrifying. I remember writing that draft, so that was draft 4, and I'm writing it and being like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why don't you just write everything in order? Be a normal person. But it's me, and I can't be that way, because it also meant a lot to me as someone with PTSD to put that on the page in that way.
Yeah.
And so I also knew that that would also make the pacing a little slower, but it would just slowly ratchet tension up to where I've had people be like tweet at me like, I'm on page 250 and my skin is on fire. I hate you. Like something is happening and I don't know what it is. And I love a story, that thing of like, in yours, it's like immediate. I was like, oh, something's
Speaking of
wrong.
skin
But
on
mine is
fire.
like a little wrong, and then a little wrong, and then a lot wrong, and then a lot wrong. And then you get to the letter scene and you're like, I hate everything. I don't know what's going on.
Oh,
Like,
it's
just,
bad.
I love that. It's that thing, go back at the beginning of talking about, I just love a story that can make you physically feel things.
Yeah.
And so that was how I got myself through it, was just thinking like, this is gonna torment everyone. I love it. But it was a very conscious decision to make it start off slower. I needed you to know these people before things started. That's all I'm gonna say. That was it. That's a representation of my book. There we go.
I have a potentially embarrassing follow-up question. As I was following so well, I was like, yes, this is Manny, this is Eli, this
Yeah.
is this thing, this is that thing. But towards the last 80 pages, I was like, I don't know what's happening. Is that on purpose, or am I a
Yes.
bad reader?
No, it's on purpose.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead. And okay, go ahead. I don't want to. I have another question ready to go, but
For me, I've been told I'm impatient, and I like the movies then where something happens right away. So I'm like, okay, so my book, something's gonna happen right away. And actually, when I wrote my first drafts and I turned to my agent, something's happening too soon, because now something doesn't happen all the way to like I think I waited until page 10. There's first an introduction, and it was interesting because they told me, well, I need to be more grounded in your world. Before you hit me on the head, make me care about what is happening and these characters. Ground me more in your world. And so I had to take that step back. And so now when you read chapter 1, it begins a little more with an explanation of like who these characters are and what it is they're up to. And then it happens. But even though you say it's right away, like for me, I waited like 8 pages before I did that. So that was pretty good.
Mark waited 308 pages.
No,
With no
things
way-
happen in my book.
Oh no, they do happen. Like the big
So-
pain, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of the physical way that you felt when you're writing it, and a lot of your readers feel, your book starts with like stomach churning and sweating and just like physically uncomfortable. I'm reading it, I'm like, I feel like something is bad happening to me. How did you do that? How did you make me feel queasy when nothing bad has happened yet?
I think it's that moment we all have when our brain is telling us like one thing, like everything's fine, this is normal, we're okay, we're just off to burn someone. And your stomach is just like, no, it's not. And I think those moments when your logic is telling you one thing, but your body is just responding in this other way, and there's this disparity between the two, I think those are the moments where we really need to wake up and listen to what our body's telling us, because it's like, no, something's not right. Even though I'm saying this is the way it's always been done, this is what my brain says, this is what my dad says, this is what we're gonna do, there's something in me that is saying no, and I need to listen to that.
That kind of loops us back around to the parents or the authority figure or the person you love telling you what to do. And spoiler, there are some things that he doesn't know that he does learn later. So just why did you want to approach a story about an untrustworthy person who is near you? And how did you want kids to, like, what did you want your readers to make of it?
I think what's so interesting about young adult is so often this is the period of time when, you know, you're figuring out, not only do adults not have all the answers, that often we are wrong, and that now you can do something about that. You have that independence and you have that agency. And so I wanted to write a story where he had been so sure of what he was doing in his dad, and then all of a sudden when you hit, you know, he's 17, he is ready to go out on his first solo project. This is going to be his life. This is what he is going to choose. And now all of a sudden he's like, well, wait a minute, I'm not sure. And I think this is the age where you can question. You are defining who you are, and he's thinking about this is what I believe in, this is what I'm going to do. And so that, for me, that was the reason to let him be, you know, have a little bit unreliable, be uncertain, be questioning, and to, you know, Dad perhaps is withholding information. Perhaps Dad has his own reasons for withholding information, but Matt doesn't know what they are, and Matt's not sure what to do.
That scene in which the dad thinks something bad's happening and like rushes in and is like, ah, and Matt sees him for the first time from the point of view of like a person not involved in this, like a normal person, is so real. It, as like a child of a parent or a person who has had an authority figure that they suddenly realized was not always right. It was just a very real moment when you're like, oh no, that person is the one that I need to watch out for. Mm-hmm. Oh, that was good, thank you. Thank you. Rebuttal?
Oh boy, no. Every adult in my book is, no, they're not all terrible. They're not, deliberately not so, but I mean, that was, reading your book too, it was that beautiful thing of like, we are both sort of writing about the same thing from two different sides. Because there are, this is another thing of like why I was so aware of like, I can't write about this now, is I knew writing about distrustful adults, particularly parents who are distrustful, was really difficult for personal reasons. And so I remember, actually it was here in DC at that event where someone went, I was signing books for Anger's a Gift, someone was like, oh my God, I love the relationship between Moss and his mother, Wanda. Is she based on your mom? And I had to just be like, that's really awkward. I was like, no, not at all. Like a little bit. And I was like, nope, not even a little bit. And I get that thing of when, you know, first of all, it was a compliment because it was like you wrote her so realistically. Right. I assumed this came from a place of experience. So on one level, I was like, okay, then I wrote her well. I did a good job. Mm-hmm. But I do understand, you know, and so I understand people looking in books and trying to find what is real, what is the thing that the author went through. But I basically spent my whole career avoiding the truth. And you know, each of us at Desert, the parents are caring but a little distant. Mm-hmm. They're super loving in my middle grade books. I had never written this experience with parents. And so you know, it was that thing too where I worried about writing parents who seemed like mustache twirling villains. Mm-hmm. And how people would perceive them of like, well, are there parents who are really this bad, who are really this evil? And then having someone who was like, yeah, my mom was terrible, like horrible to me and my brother and my younger sister. And ultimately going with first of all, splitting those people into, that's why there are multiple adults who are bad in different ways. Like, Manny's adoptive mom is not the same as Deacon Thompson, the person who runs this religious camp. They behave differently, they act differently. There's almost this twisted paternal sense in Deacon Thompson where you can see why people really like him.
Yes.
Because he does care, but his care is always with a condition, which is different than an adoptive parent. You meet multiple of the foster parents that Manny and Elena have, where some of them just see, and it's unfortunate, in the foster system, they see the children as paychecks.
Yes.
Or they see the children as like, I want to mold you into the version of the child I didn't get to have, which isn't fair to a kid. They don't get to develop who they want. And so you see variations of it. So for me, that helped me pull away from it, them feeling like supervillains, is, well, let me put little bits and pieces into a bunch of adults to show what a framework of distrustful adults look like. But then on the flip side, you have the Varelas, this family that Manny travels with, who I love, who were sometimes very hard to write, because I was like, I don't actually know this. This is not my experience.
Yeah.
It was later in life, but you know, a thing that did show up in a lot of my previous work is found family. I love found family. I love the idea of that you get to choose who your relatives are as you get older, and you could choose it now, as well. But I love the idea that people who are not blood related to you can feel like mothers, brothers, sisters, siblings, any of that sort of stuff. And so I love that they brought levity to the book, but also sort of demonstrated these frameworks of, well, what if you are an adult who is interacting with a kid who is deeply distrustful of everyone around them? How do you actually navigate that? So I talked to a lot of therapists, a lot of social workers. Particularly, there was a social worker when I was writing the book in Atlanta who is trauma focused, specifically kids who go through high levels of trauma in the home, to figure out like, how would these two people who are also trained in that, how do you just talk to a kid? And there were so many things that I didn't even think like, oh, right, I wouldn't like that. So they have, for example, a great thing they do is every single morning, the mom, whose name I just forgot, Monica, sorry, I write a lot of books. There's a lot of people in it. Monica does this thing every morning in the van when Manny's getting in the van where she says, do you want to come with us today? You can say no. And just to say, like, I'm giving you an option and you are allowed to say no is like a thing that I had never experienced as a kid, but was a thing that this trauma therapist really helped me understand of like, this is a thing of like letting kids know you are allowed to make choices and say something you think might disappoint me and it won't disappoint me. Like, I was just like, my mind was blown. I was like, this is amazing. And so it was also fun writing trustful adults and figuring out what they actually look like. And I remember having visceral responses reading your book of like, I don't want to spoil. What was the uncle?
Don't do it.
Uncle, is it Kendrick?
Nobody listen.
There's a character named Uncle Kendrick. I hated him on sight. Like on sight. I was like, if I see him in the streets, it's on. Like, and I hope I don't, because that'd be weird. But like, it was that thing too, where if you're a kid who's gone through something, I knew because of past history, I was like, no, wrong, bad, hate, don't like at all. Something there is wrong. But I loved having that because the way you design that character, I was able to pick up on the things that he does nice or kind that maybe have another meaning. And it's just so deft and detailed. And I love this book, by the way.
Thank you.
So Mark had personal experience that he was writing from and some research, trauma therapists, et cetera. What kind of background work did you do, or what did you really, really want to say that turned into?
Did you talk to any demons?
I couldn't find any. I did do some research just on cults and that area. But to be honest, what the main idea that I had was this uncertainty, and I think, for me, it was mining that for myself and feeling like I don't know what to do because I'm hearing this from someone I've always trusted, but I'm feeling this, and so where do I jump? Which way do I go? And so for me, it was a lot of, when I talk about having to rewrite it and go through that emotional arc, it was thinking about periods of uncertainty, like, did I make the right decision here? And you know, I thought that I'm doing my best, but was it the best now that I look back? And so it's those feelings of uncertainty, of thinking about, well, this is where I'm coming from, this is what I've done, and how do I move forward now with that knowledge and with what I'm learning now? So.
And you trust your readers with a lot of uncertainty. You do not answer questions, and you really keep them hanging, and that's really cleverly done, because it's easy to be like, I don't know, I don't get it, or to just give your readers something that you know they want right now, but then you have that delayed gratification. So how do you approach your trust with the readers?
I think one thing I learned as I read a lot is I can feel it when the author's over-explaining to me, and I was like, but I already knew that. You don't have to tell me that. And I think readers are smart. You know, you're picking up on the clues that we're laying down, and I don't ever want to over-explain in my books. I would rather have you questioning as a reader what's going to happen next, or where does this piece fit, than feel like I am telling you more because I didn't think you got it the first time. So I will leave those questions for you, and even if it's, you get to the end, you're like, oh wait, let me go back and check that one. Then you can go back, but I'm not going to answer them the first time, because I think the reader can.
Yeah.
You made a puzzle a little bit.
I try.
You put it together.
Yeah,
That sounded very aggressive, but yeah.
you do it. But the work of making a puzzle is way more work than solving a puzzle.
Ugh.
So sometimes I read a mystery novel, even like Agatha Christie or like a classic. I'm like, how did you do that? So I'll never be a mystery writer, but I'll continue admiring our thriller and mystery writers. We have less than 10 minutes left before we open up to question and answer session, which I hope you've been thinking some questions. And I want to ask you, you don't get to do this as a writer, but if you could, what do you want to see your reader read? Like, what face do you want to see? What reaction to what part of your book do you want to be a witness to?
There's a scene in the book where Matt and his project, he's has to determine if she's marked. Her name's Ray. They're having a talk in the graveyard. Ray's father has died in a car accident, and that's why Matt's there to examine Ray. And that was a hard scene to write, because it is so emotional. And she's sitting beside her father's grave and asking, I woke up this morning and I heard, I heard noises downstairs, and I thought it was Dad in the kitchen making pancakes like he used to. And then I remembered. She's like, what if I'm forgetting? What if I don't know? And I forget the smiles, and that was, Matt talks to her, and it's the first time he's really authentic with her. And so that would be the scene that I would want to watch them read, to see if I nailed it, to see if I got that emotion on that page, that moment where it's a very real moment between them, where so much of it is lies and secrets, that I would hope that they would just be engrossed in it and following along and feeling everything I felt when I wrote it.
I think what was partly another thing that was powerful in that scene is when she says, you're the only person, or one of the only people, who treat me like a person, and you know how to talk to me. Like, people don't know how to talk to a girl whose dad died. And that was really powerful, having been the person on the other side, being like, my friend or loved one experienced something, and I don't know what to do for them. So you kind of give people permission to just express what they're feeling and just connect. So that was a scene that made me sad and hopeful, and the friendship was blooming, and I was like, what's she gonna do next? So tell us about your scene.
I have been very lucky in that I was at a writing retreat, and I did not know my friend was reading Into the Light on the Kindle. And so I got to watch them experience the twist. And first of all, have you ever eaten like a warhead? Mm-hmm. Like that face. Like they were just disgusted. And I was so satisfied. And then I assume they got to the end of the scene when it then, and they just closed the cover on the Kindle and walked out to a lake. And it was so satisfying. I was like, I gave you an existential crisis. So it was great. But I would actually say for everyone, the last paragraph. Because I'm going to say now, I think it's the happiest ending I've ever, and I told that to a friend who was like, you are demented. But I think it's the happiest ending to anything I've ever written. And I would love to see someone's face at that. That's what I'm saying.
That's beautiful, especially this book that took so much out of you
It did.
to write. You deserve it.
Thank you.
You deserve a
Thank
happy
you.
ending. And I know it's question time, but tell us about your ending and how it made you feel for the ending of this part of the program. Without telling us anything.
Say nothing.
It was one that the kernel had always been there, and I revised and revised and revised, and finally I knew how I wanted the reader to feel when they closed the book, so I think I got there.
I think you did too. You like polished this pearl perfectly. That was good. Thank you so much. Thanks for the
you.
two of you for answering my questions. You know how you admire people and then you talk to them and you're like, you're even cooler. So that's how I am. And now it's your turn to ask some questions. So what would you like to know? Would you mind coming up to the mic if you have a question? And then we'll kind of go 1, 2, 1, 2. The beanbags are
If you're
traps.
on a beanbag, we will bring the mic to you.
So, Mark, you've made reference about how you feel. Yes.
Yes.
You've made reference about your book and your childhood trauma
Yeah.
and how you now can kind of choose your family. And,
Yeah.
But through the writing this book and maybe also through the therapy you've also mentioned, how is your relationship now with your mother? And have you
Oh, no.
ever been able to
no.
did this
No,
help
so
you feel enough?
I'm going to only stop you because there's like 3 people here who know the answer to the question. In a weird twist of events, 2 weeks before the book came out, my mom died. And at that point, she had disowned me for 7 years. So I don't know. And it was a weird reality into the light is that the book came out and like every day I was like, why did this have to happen? I was like, how dare you, universe? So I don't know. She missed my whole publishing career. She never said anything about any of my books. And I'm open about talking about it. I don't mind talking about it. I talk about it because I'm like, that is what people who believe what they do about queer people and who cling to that, like that's what you did. And I have no shame about it. Like I did the best that I could and had tried to repair that relationship for like 15 years and she just gave up. And so at the same time, it did make talking about it easier when I went on tour. Because every night I was like, boy, I'm going to get a bunch of personal questions about this book. And it did give me some sense of relief because I was like, well, I don't have to worry about, is she ever going to call ever again? Like she made her decision. And I'm in therapy that's getting me through it. I will say it did give me better understanding of my father. He passed in 2006. And I definitely wrote this book in a way of trying to understand a parent who slowly comes around, because he did. And at the signing, if you want to ask me, I have the funniest story I will ever tell you about my dad. And when he realized like I was, it's great. It involves the Super Bowl. It's fun, right? But I did write the book thinking about parents who don't understand. And I want to understand, but don't get it and want to. And so there's some of that in the Varellas. There's some of that in some of the random people that they meet. So I find that healing as well.
Okay, well, Mom Hug's available if you need.
Yes. Sorry.
You can come up to the
We'll do
mic.
last one.
Oh,
You can also ask us questions that are signing at 6 as well, because I know there are lots of you who want to ask questions.
What traits do you have in common with a character in the story?
Ooh, tell us.
yes, tell us. Linda and Matt.
That is an excellent question. I think for me, well, there are the things where it's like, well, I also like to run. I also like to go to bakeries and eat there. But I think for me, one of the biggest things is asking questions. I think whenever I feel that that feeling in your stomach, even when my brain tells me something, I've felt it enough that now I know to stop whatever it is I'm doing and think, something's wrong, and I need a moment to figure out what it is. Thank you.
And I would say very quickly is that, and you've seen it here today, it doesn't matter how dark it gets, I love a good joke. And that is Manny too. He has some of my favorite one-liners ever, because I just love that idea that you can diffuse something that's really hard with just a really good joke. And it can be this meaningful, cool thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.